Hey there, modern world history students. This is Sanchez with a brief lecture talking about our DBQ in class. The driving question of this DBQ essay, remember, DBQ stands for Document-Based Essay Question. The question we're addressing is, what was the driving force behind European imperialism in Africa? Remember, at this point in the game, folks, you should realize that imperialism, our definition, means a stronger, more industrialized country taking over another region or part of the world, and again taking over political, social, economic aspects. For example, Great Britain, one of our strongest industrialized nations, they were the ones that gobbled up most of the territories early on, not only in Africa, but our discussions of India and other places around the world. Now remember, in class we've talked about different motives. And when we mean motive, we're talking about what is causing Europeans to actually go into Africa and want to take it over. There are several factors that we addressed, or motivations. Number one, we talked about political motivation. The fact that European countries are being competitive at this time period. They have an extreme nationalism, they have extreme pride in their nation, and they want to go out and they want to conquer territory, expand their military, and gain that strength. Number two, obviously, most of you agreed with the fact that there's a huge element of economic motivation. When we're talking about economic motives, we're referencing the fact countries want to make money. They're looking for raw materials for their factories. For example, cotton was a raw material, especially for our textile factories back in England. And we also see that Europeans are looking for markets or places to sell these finished products. In addition to that, we've discussed exploratory motives, going out, seeing the world, getting out of that crowded, smoky factory, stop working those long hours and horrific conditions, and actually going on an adventure, going on a steamship and traveling around the world. Our next motive we mentioned briefly in class, didn't really see in this document packet, was our religious motives, our missionary impulse. And then finally, another main component, obviously we cannot deny, is there's a huge element of ideological motivation. Remember, ideological motivation, we're talking about the racist component. The idea that the white race thinks that they're better than or superior than these different races, and it's their moral duty to go out and teach or show them the light or show them the way and make them Europeans like we see in Europe. Now in document A, we can use document A in several ways to prove our argument in our essay. One of the major things that we could cite as evidence is obviously our observations. So we see on the course of the map, okay, several different shadings that correspond with the key right down here. We can definitely link this to several motives. Number one, you could definitely tie this political motivation, the fact that we see countries going out taking territory. Several of you tied this to an economic motive, the fact that European countries want to go out and take this territory, maybe for example South Africa, because they're looking for resources in diamond and gold mines. Several people cited the fact that this is evidence of an exploratory motive, that Europeans want to go out and actually map this uncharted territory, get beyond the Ivory Coast and kind of explore the interior of Africa, especially now since we have vaccines to prevent malaria, and we have new technology like the steam engine. And then we also cited that perhaps we could even use this ideological motivation, the fact that the Europeans think they can take over the territory, or that they're supposed to claim Africa and make it their own. All right, in document B, we have a 2-for-1. Remember, in the first document, we're talking about a document regarding England. And some of the quotes a lot of you pulled out, that England's message is to, again, find colonies as fast and as far as she is able. Perhaps we could tie this to the competition, political motivation. Remember, quote right here, we could say, seizing every piece of fruitful waste ground. Perhaps we're referencing the resources. Maybe we could tie that to an economic motivation. The second piece of the document is from a German author talking that Germany needs to kind of step up their game, and if they want to be competitive, if they want to maintain their newly won position of power, they're going to have to sort of follow the British lead and make sure that they maintain their position by trade and by sea power. So remember, we could tie that to exploratory motives, we could talk that to economic motives, or again tied to our political motives for our nationalism, that they want Germany to be a strong and powerful nation. All right, in document D, we have a chart that we could look at in terms of, the title of it is Selected African Colonies and Their Exports. Remember, exports means what's exiting Africa, so what's actually being sent back to, in this case, the European countries. So several items that you could add to your list or your saving matter chart. You could talk about ivory. Remember, ivory is actually cut off elephant tusks, and the Europeans would manufacture jewelry and different items out of it. We could say coal, which is a huge fuel source for the Europeans. Rubber, coffee, gold, diamonds, we mentioned earlier for South Africa. So many of you could probably cite this as a perfect example of an economic motivation in document D. All right, document E was a chart that we looked at together in class. Now, your copy didn't have the questions at the bottom, but this was a chart that we saw that a big jump as far as imports and exports to Africa. Remember, exports in this case, looking at the title, we're talking about what Great Britain is sending to South Africa. So you can see on the far right that darker shade is extremely high. Now again, how could you spin that or use that as evidence for your argument? Several of you went automatically to the economic motives, the fact that Europeans are sending products back to Africa to make a profit. We could also spin it in terms of ideological. Perhaps the Europeans think that they should be using the products. Maybe they're sending clothes, or maybe sending soap, or maybe sending products that they think that Africans should be using or buying or trading and so forth. We could also tie it to we could tie it to political motives. The fact that the Europeans are trying to get more money, which again could equate more power. And then finally, document F was another 2-in-1. There are two pieces from the text that you could use for your DBQ essay. The first portion, which is the white man's burden. Several quotes that we can annotate here. Remember, take up the white man's burden. Send forth the best ye breed. We're talking about the best breed, the white race, the Europeans, that they're smart, they're industrialized, that they are supposed to go out, and their burden is to teach and support the bottomed out here, as they call the Africans, half devil, half child. Half devil, they don't know Christianity, they're very childlike, they need to be taken care of or taught properly. This even ties back to even one of our vocabulary terms, paternalism, where Europeans felt like they should watch over or take care of the Africans in some way. We also see the second piece, which is talking about an African chief, kind of using an analogy here, the chameleon and the fly. So the chameleon kind of sneaks up behind, and at the end it kind of quotes the fact that England is the chameleon and I am the fly. Now for document F, you could definitely use that in terms of ideological motivation. There's a huge element of racism and European dominance. You could also equate that to political motivation. Okay, England's swallowing up the power or the control that Africa has. I know a few of you mentioned in class resources. Maybe the flies represent the resources within Africa. So remember, folks, just like a lawyer, you have to take the evidence and you need to argue it in a way that's going to support your overall case, proving the driving force of imperialism in Africa. All right, finally, I just want to go ahead and briefly review in terms of introduction paragraphs. Remember, folks, you need to be coming up with a hook or something clever to kind of catch your reader's attention. But then I did provide you the stem or the starter within your packet. For example, European imperialism had several driving forces behind it, including, and you can kind of fill in the blank there, okay, so political, economic, ideological. And then the second one, your choice, choose your own adventure, political, economic, ideological. However, the most important cause of imperialism was, and then you're going to choose what you think is the #1 reason. Maybe you think back to our thrash out activity where you had to choose and pick a side and argue which was the most important motivation for imperialism. Now, right after that, you of course want to go into your body paragraphs, which is going to include your topic sentence. Topic sentence is the first sentence in your body paragraphs. So an example of that would be, one of the driving forces behind European imperialism in Africa was political. Okay, then again, we're going to add our evidence and our argument. Now, when I say evidence, we're talking about the information from the documents that backs up the topic sentence. Specifically, actually using the information from the documents to show one of the driving forces. So, for example, we could put that in quotation marks from document B. England must seize every piece of land they could step foot on. Parentheses, document B. The continent of Africa was divided up between 7 European countries, which include Great Britain and France having most of the land. Parentheses, document A. Please double check when you're revising that you're not stating that the document is telling you something. Do not say, in document A, the map clearly shows me. Okay, that would be incorrect. Please make sure that you're checking that you've cited the document at the end. And then finally, obviously, besides just citing a bunch of evidence, you want to consider, what is your argument? What is your explanation? What is your commentary? In this case, we're talking about explaining how the evidence shows a driving force. So an example, the more land a country gets, the more power they have. This creates a competition between European countries to strive and go out and try to get as much land as possible. Okay, maybe that's kind of a start of an argument there. Another example I could throw at you guys. These two countries are demonstrating nationalism by colonizing as much land as possible, which supports political motives behind European imperialism in Africa. So again, those are just kind of two examples perhaps you could consider using for your arguments in your essay. All right, folks, that was about a 11-minute lecture just in terms of reviewing the documents and making sure you're on the correct path. After reviewing this lecture and revising your essay, please make sure you go to Haiku. You want to look into the Dropbox tab and then look for where it says Revise and Resubmit Imperialism DBQ. All right, thanks, guys. I'll see you in class.